I got a couple questions for you. Being the guy that just hits things, there's a couple things that even as a rhythm section that we do exist in two different worlds. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, since you're a mostly monophonic instrument playing one note at a time, when you're approaching a groove or just approaching being in a different band, or even with the band that we play in a lot with Richie Kotzen, what are some certain harmonic responsibilities that as you're developing your part, not just rhythmic but also harmonic, the note choices that you make over the different chord changes, that you're always keeping in mind in the groove? Are there any some tips or strategies or things that you're always considering?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important that you always know what the chords are that you're playing. Obviously, that seems obvious, but it's not always something that people have in their mind, like what key you're in, or what. Sometimes you might be in the key of G, for instance, and you'll have a major 2 chord. And what does that mean with harmonically with what's going on? And if something like that happens, like there's an outlier in that case, if you're in G and there's an A7 in there, so the third of that chord is going to be C sharp, which is not in the key of G, right? So as a bass player, you could grab that and really outline that special moment that happens, because it's not in the key. It's the thing that's, ooh, what is that right there? And I think so always knowing where you're at harmonically and what's going on with those chord changes and where those chords are leading to, because as a bass player, we like to lead into certain chord changes. You hear bass players do a lot of chromatic walk-ups and things into chords, because we want to take you to that new chord in a nice way. We want to lift you.
You want to lead.
That. Yeah, you want to lead into that section.
Yeah, so that way, it's just I always call it spoon feeding the listener a little bit. You want to, even from my share,
right.
So that there's no drastic transitions.
Right, and that could be really important too when you're playing. You might be doing a pickup gig with a singer that is unsure of the key or where she's at. Maybe she's having a tough time singing. I don't know. I just assumed it was a girl. It could be a guy singing. But in those situations, you could really help keep everybody on track and keep the. I always find, I bring up singers because I find that singers really listen to the bass. I think there's a relationship there, just like bass players and drummers, rhythmically and stuff. Harmonically, what's going on, that melody and that bass are so important, to be in tune with each other and on the same track. So
I actually, to interrupt you, I've in the same way in an orchestra you've tuned to the tuba, I've always thought of a singer and everybody tuning to the listening into the bass, that fundamental low low note that the
foundation of what's going on there.
That we kind of handle pitch from the bottom up. So I think it's really important for everybody to be dialed in of what's
so as a bass player, if you understand the harmony, understand what's going on with the chords and where the section's leading to, you could do huge things for your fellow bandmates to signify where you're going and what's happening and avoid train wrecks and things of this nature. Another point to the to harmonic, what you could do is if you're in a loop jam section, say you got a part where it's just 2 chords going on forever. If you understand the harmony of those chords, you could do things called inversions. And for those of you who don't know what that is, say the chord is C, right? So basic C chord is C, E, and G. It's the root, the third, and the fifth. Now, you might be plugging along on the root for a long time, right?
Yeah, the 1 chord.
Yeah, the 1 chord, right? Or what
the first note in that chord.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Let's say that we're playing 4 to 5. We're still in the key G, since I was talking about G earlier. So we're going C to D, and those chords are C. I just said C, E, and G, and then the D, F sharp, and A. So say that's a loop section, right? And you get to a point where you feel like, I need to create more energy. I need to do something more interesting here to keep the audience connected, and also to give some inspiration to maybe the soloist. Say it's a section and the guitar player is going off, and you feel like, I just need to give him a little something. You could throw in that third, and instead of pounding out that root and going C to D, you could be like, okay, I'm going to go after this next C to D progression, I'm going to go to that E. So now I've gone up the scale and I'm still harmonically correct, and that third kind of creates a certain momentum to what's going on. Yeah. And then I could go when that D comes around, instead, so I just did a C over E. I can make that next one a D over F sharp, right? So now I have this progression that's building because I'm going up the scale, but I'm still holding down what's correct harmonically. And I could create.
So when you say correct harmonically, just for those that maybe don't understand theory, no notes are rubbing in the wrong ways. It still feels comfortable and it still fits. Like as a bass player, you're not just glued to playing the principal or the tonic, the one, the first note of a chord, or the first note of the you don't have to just be there. You can kind of find these harmonic substitutions.
Exactly. And if you're familiar with the chords and their extensions, you could go a long way with that. That could be probably a whole video in itself. But that's a great thing you bring up. I think bass players really need to know. It feels to me that a lot of bass players either focus so much on rhythmically what's going on, getting their slap game together, or they're super focused on harmonically what's going on. And there's a balance there that you have to keep both of those happening, because that's the responsibility of the bass player is really straddling both of those spheres in music, harmonically and rhythmically what's going on. And either one of those by itself isn't getting the job done.
All right, another bass question. What about length of notes? Because that's something with bass players a lot that, everybody has their own personality towards it, but I think it's a really important thing, especially on just how a groove breathes overall. So, not just the actual harmonic notes that are being played, the melodic stuff, but how long those notes are. So even when working with a drum groove, what's some of the stuff that maybe you can offer towards how you approach just how long the notes are, or maybe how open they are, just your overall concept of how things work.
Yeah. I think drummers are especially in tune with that with the bass players as well. So when I play long notes versus short notes, it creates a different sort of feel. So in certain sections of a song, you might want to do like a palm mutant technique or something and get some really tight short notes, and it could really bring the listener into the section, tighten up the groove a little bit. It feels like it sucks in the air a little bit versus playing longer notes. And it's like when a section gets louder, it's not about getting louder. It's about getting bigger, right? And so long notes, I mean, you could play the same groove, right? Say it doesn't change at all. It could just be the boom, 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 right? Yeah. So you could start with that tight short note thing, and then if it needs to get bigger, right, you just open that up, boom, 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 and you really didn't do a whole lot of anything, except for just make that note longer, and it can have a profound effect on how that section feels and how the dynamics feel of that. And so maybe more to your question.
Yeah, actually, it's how you sang it right there. Like you didn't sing boom, 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 like this big sustained legato thing. It was boom, boom, boom. You closed it off. Like the time's still going. And, so I think that's like a big thing.
So intermixing both of those.
Yeah, knowing like when to stop the notes. It's not just like you play something and it's action, reaction, action, reaction. One of those actions is actually stopping that note so there's that space like for selfishly for me to get in there or for a vocal to get in there.
Yeah, where that note ends is much more important, I feel like, than where it's... Well, maybe not much more important, but it's just as important as to where the note starts. And stopping those notes in good places, like you said, to create space and create air for the rest of what's going on, with everybody else. It's like we're making this sound sculpture together, right?
Yeah.
And you just can't take up all the space, or there's no, you don't see the definition of what you're trying to sculpt. Together,
totally. And I get really dialed into like that opening and closing, like from where I'm at.
Yeah.
And even like where you said, like, if you're gonna palm mute something, which in your palm muting, it's making it a little, it's muted. It's it's definitely not as bright. You're pulling off like all that top end. So I react to that on how I can play sensitively, and also just on my choices on what I'm going to play, like whether I'm going to be opening up the hi-hats or I can breathe with that opening and closing too, where I put my kick kick parts, where the ghost notes lie, all of that is a reaction to what the bass player is doing. So if a bass player is creating this very long, sustained feel, not only do I think it's a groove killer at times, but it also causes me to kind of play in a very open way that, like, I can't bring the groove as inside as maybe I would like to.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And those kind of have to go together. We earlier talked about locking and kick drum and not having to always be together. But the long short thing kind of has to be together. It doesn't quite work for you to be open hi hat, like letting those drums ring out, and me to tighten up and do that. We're kind of moving together in that. And so listening to what you're doing, or whatever drummer, and reacting to that appropriately is very important, right? And being aware of how long and short your notes are, and how that is in context of what's going on. Mm-hmm. It's an important thing to know. All right, Mike, let's do an example of long and short notes.
Okay.
So I'm going to play a groove, and I'll start with probably short notes, and then we'll move into the long note thing and feel how that differs and what that adds.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
Another one now.
Yeah.
Where now can you kind of go back and forth and like kind of develop the phrase between some more long and short notes? Because like already I was feeling the don't do do, even when you were short, that space was like kind of asking, like it was even without doing it, it was implying more length. So, and then as you're doing that, I'm gonna kind of adjust my groove a little bit to see if I can jump on a few of those things if it helps.
Okay, let's give it a shot. Yeah.
Here we go. Cool. So just by kind of focusing on the length of the notes, it's going to shape the overall groove in a different way.
I think on that last one you could really feel that, like with the long guy in the front, and then you had all that air before the next long guy to hit, and then so there's a more push and pull, and there's more space within that groove, and
there's more weight.
More weight.
Yeah, like things just like it feels heavier.
Yeah.
And also what's cool is when it's played in that way, like I didn't feel like I needed to go back all the time to grabbing every single note because it already was serving its purpose. I could outline it, and I feel sometimes that's when I can make things feel heavier. So it's just a lot of options to just explore, just how into the details you want to make your groove.
Yeah, a lot of times I would say about that too is that that becomes sort of a reactionary second nature thing. I don't find myself thinking about it so much. In fact, when I try to think about it more, it's liable I'm gonna ruin it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to even like play some of these things sometimes. It's just a natural reaction because like you're going like, all right, well I'm gonna illustrate jumping on this, but it's like I don't want to jump on it. I want to try to be musical.
Right. Exactly.
So exercise restraint.